So I'd like to obviously begin today's episode talking about a little bit about the protests that I attended yesterday at Foley Square in New York. It was the first legal hearing regarding the basically the rendition of green card holder Mahmud Khalil, who is, you know, as we've covered on last week's last episode. I think we all are aware of the situation regarding his proposed deportation from the United States for, as the Trump administration has admitted openly, not for breaking the law, but for personally being a threat to the national security of the United States by protesting Israel. I just want to begin there. What do you make of the idea that the people deporting him are resting their case by saying explicitly this is not about whether he broke any law, but this is about whether the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, can personally deem, based on like an obscure 1952 law, any legal resident of America basically a threat to the national security consensus and be like subject to deportation. And by that, I mean, are we to believe that this one individual is a threat to the national security of the United States, or is it rather the opinions that he represents and advocates on behalf of is a threat to the national security consensus of the United States?
I mean, this is a weak case, and they know this is a weak case because every time that it gets brought up to either a journalist on CNN or in the White House press room, the people who are defending this action can't just rest it on Marco Rubio's own assertion that, you know, this person is such a deep threat to the foreign policy consensus that he has to be deported. It's always the fact that, he was getting paid by foreign terrorist organizations that we can't name, or he was handing out flyers with Hamas iconography that we can't show you. Or it's that, I mean, just today when they were talking with people who were in the DHS, the idea was that because he was pro-Palestine, that therefore meant he was pro-Hamas. And because you're involved in that space to begin with, therefore you're pro-Hamas, and therefore by that, you're supporting a foreign terrorist organization, and therefore you have to be disappeared. You have to be deported from this country. It's an incredibly weak assertion. And I think Marco Rubio also knows this deep down, that Mahmud Khalil, a negotiator for the Colombia demonstrators, is not such a deep threat that he is some sort of... I don't know if the analog would be some sort of Tokyo Rose.
Some sort of Islamic James Bond in America.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. No. By all accounts, the description that people utilized for him was that he was an obsessive rules follower. He was very calm. He was very level-headed. And they're trying to make an example out of him now. Someone who is not going to all these different places. He's not going to Nasrallah vigils in Manhattan. He's not going out talking about how much he loves I will obey the. This is someone who is ostensibly a very positive public face for the Colombian encampment. And if they can get this guy, based on this incredibly flimsy case, then they can get to everyone else. It means that you cannot defend Palestine in any meaningful way in any public setting.
Yeah, I mean, the assertions that, like, he either received or contributed, like, financial or material support or, like, did anything approaching espionage is especially ridiculous. You know, anyone who's paid attention for the last 20 years or so knows that federal prosecutors are really not shy about stringing anybody up on material support charges. There's a long list of people doing gas price sentences for really nothing in the way of that. But yeah, this is sort of like kind of flies in the face of the idea that you can condemn Hamas your way out of this.
Yeah. I engaged on this topic the other day, and like the thing you have to remember when you're arguing with people who just like flatly assert that he was violently preventing people from going to class at Columbia seems to be like something that they've settled on, or that he was a member of an organization that distributed a pamphlet that had the quote, the destruction of Western civilization or something. The point is, it's not about any of this stuff. None of these people have the courage of their convictions to flatly advocate for the thing that the principle they're actually defending, which is that it should be illegal to protest Israel. I had one guy, I was like, on the matter of material support for terrorism, I made the example that like during the 70s and 80s, there are many Irish Americans and Irish American advocacy organizations that went quite a bit beyond rhetorical support for the IRA in terms of just outright raising money for them. And I said, well, what do you make of that? And the guy said, Will, what you don't understand is that they weren't doing it in a library that they did at a school they didn't go to. And I thought, well, okay, yeah. If you'd just been raising money for terrorists and not bothering anyone during study hall, then I'm sure you'd be totally okay with what's going on here.
I'll hold my tongue about the library thing, but and Irish Americans. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that Mahmoud Khalil was like a condemn Hamas guy at all. What I meant by that is, if just the concept of protesting alone is enough to warrant this, then there is no clarification you can make. There's no carve out. There is no concession that will make it okay for these people. The fact that they have gone this far, I mean, in effect, this would be the most draconian, insane speech law anywhere in the fucking Western world. This was all these people, love talking about those cases where the bobbies show up to your house in the UK if you post Groyper, not even Groyper, Pepe. Pepe will get you sent to Longkesh. But
we have to stand behind the men behind the wire.
Yeah, is it like this is more insane than any of those? Because to say nothing about Khalil's political convictions, his actual conduct and his adherence to the law is beyond question.
And additionally, it moves I hate to use this phrase, but it moves the Overton window on the discussion of this further to the right. I mean, you've seen all of these Democratic politicians, Chuck Schumer, Andrew Cuomo, Hakeem Jeffries. They have to precede their condemnations of his deportation proceedings with 2 or 3 paragraphs talking about how much they despise this fucking guy, how much he represents what's evil in America, that he represents, everything that's wrong with how Jews are treated in this country. And then they say, well, if he can't charge with anything, then he got to let him go. They're purely they're purely reduced to talking about the technicalities of the argument.
Yeah, Séamus, and you made a really good point about this, that and look, I have seen some liberal figures and politicians make decent statements about this, that are commensurate with the facts and the moral issue, the moral and political issue at stake here. But in terms of the leadership of the Democratic Party, Chuck Schumer, Andrew Cuomo, Hakeem Jeffries, the point you made, Séamus, is that they need to make it a free speech issue in the sense that we all find David Duke repellent, but the First Amendment protects even the most repellent, vile speech. And this is just they just expect you that to just sort of glaze over your mind, to just be oh yeah, he was calling for all Jews to go to the gas chamber or something like that. When in actuality, this was someone who was the definition of as you said, a thoughtful and considerate political advocate. And this idea that he was that we simply must defend even the abhorrent speech of someone like Mahmoud Khalil is, I think, very telling.
And it runs you into this trap wherein, Mahmoud Khalil is this evil fucking guy somehow. But then when you talk about other Palestine protesters who are inevitably going to get wrapped up in this, they're going to attempt this again, obviously. Those sorts of defenses are not going to rise to the occasion. You're just going to dismiss them. You're not going to put up this kind of fight if you're already preceding it with all of these qualifications. You're setting yourself up to fail. But if you're a Democrat, obviously, then you want all these things to fail. This is something that you don't fundamentally care about. Situation's dire.
And no, it's really dire. And I think a very important point that I'd like to make here, and this is, one that was reinforced at the protest at Foley Square that I attended the other day with, about 1,000 other New Yorkers who came out in front of the New York courthouse to hear from his lawyers as they exited. His lawyers, by the way, still hadn't even talked to him at that point. I don't know if that's the case now, but he's been basically denied legal counsel. He has talked to his lawyers, but not on a non-government monitored phone call, which is not legal counsel. But the point I want to make is when you hear the debates over this or the arguments, or if you wade into any discourse over this, the people who are arguing for his deportation are going to try to get you bogged down in matters of legal minutia and did he stay in the library past closing hours or something like that. And I think the point that everyone needs to remember here is that this is a case, this is not at all about what is legal or illegal. This is not about the law, because the law is on his side. This is about power. This is an exercise. This is a demonstration of power and a test case to see how much power we are willing to let them have. And that power that they're seeking to accrue for themselves is the power to essentially disappear from public life large swaths of citizens and legal residents alike whose political opinions they find distasteful. And distasteful would be putting it mildly.
No, and I mean, right now, Beitar, the people who apparently helped supply his name to the people who could deport him. I mean, they're talking about going after what you said, naturalized citizens now. I'm sure they will make attempts to go after born citizens who have foreign backgrounds. When Marco Rubio is basing the centrality of his argument on placing yourself in contrast to American foreign policy, the net that is spreading is so wide, it is so expansive that it will come after you, it'll come after your parents, it'll come after your friends. Because that doesn't have to just be in Palestine. It can mean being against a future war with Iran. It can mean being against simply giving weapons to Israel outside of the context of an active war. It can mean anything that America wants it to eventually become. This is the canary in the coal mine, as it were. What is happening now will apply to a ton of future situations if it is allowed to occur.
Well, this gets to another thing, is that like the current situation surrounding the suppression of free speech on the issue of Palestine, like, has been compared to like Red Scares in the past. And it's reaching a level of hysteria and danger that I think we all feel. And like, or at least one doesn't really even have to compare it to things in the past to understand the gravity of the present moment. I think specifically about the news story about how a mayor in Miami Beach, Florida, is trying to revoke the lease on a movie theater for simply screening the Oscar best documentary winner at the Oscars this year, No Other Land. And I think the thing to keep in mind here is that like these are not the actions of a political project that has hegemonic control over the narrative anymore. I think they understand that they have lost the narrative to a large degree, and they have lost the public opinion of the United States, of the American people as well. And that these actions that they're taking are commensurate with their understanding that they can no longer just cajole or mystify or just sort of get people to look the other way anymore. Now it has to be outright, full-on, total, in-your-face repression.
Yeah, and it is, cold comfort that these are not the actions of a lobby or a political movement that is either in control or sees a bright future for itself, certainly. I mean, as exciting as those two things are in the American context, that would be unthinkable 10 years ago, much less 15, much less at the start of the war on terror. It unfortunately does mean that it's probably going to get a lot shittier than this. There are going to be much more vulgar displays. I mean, I think just revoking someone's legal status like that it's a clear test case to see what they can do to, people who were born here, to everyone.
I mean, just as a brief comment, the fact that I'm still shocked by was that I was under the impression that immigration judges are some of the biggest pieces of shit on earth, but you have to still go through the process of revoking green cards and revoking visas and all that. For an ICE officer to simply say, revoke his student visa because they didn't know what the fuck he was on. Yeah. And then to just go around and say, oh, his green card is revoked too. No process, no whatever. The complete breakdown of all structures, of all veneers of structures of power, of checks and balances, I think is incredibly frightening. And I'm not entirely sure how you reconstruct that in this space.
Yeah. And in that case, then there is no distinction between someone who came here and got a green card and anyone else. Because if they can just by fiat revoke anything without any process, then it doesn't fucking matter what your legal status is. It can be done to anyone.
I think another issue that's important to talk about here is I've seen so many people just say, when confronted or asked the question, what law did he break? And then there'll be a litany of things about he terrorized his campus, or did terrorism against his fellow college students. Well, or he's funded by Hamas or a terrorist network or something like that. And when they're confronted with, those are crimes. Why isn't the government charging him with those crimes? They will simply say, oh, he's a green card holder. It's different. No, it's not.
And also not anymore.
Yeah. If you are legally in the United States, you are entitled to all the protections of the Bill of Rights. Like, it doesn't matter if you have if you're a green card or a born citizen. You can't vote if you have a green card, but you are still covered by the First Amendment. But here's another thing. In all of the condemnations of him, that he celebrated October 7th, or he supports Hamas, he advocates for the destruction of Israel. Even if those charges were true and could be validated in any way, shape, or form, that is 100% protected speech. It is literally the definition of speech that's protected by the First Amendment. Saying, I hate the U.S. government and advocate its violent overthrow is free speech. And how about even saying that about a foreign government?
I mean, for that matter, being anti-Semitic is not against the fucking law. That is a right that everyone has. When they started this country, they were like, you can be in your house and think that Jews are annoying. That's not that you don't get kicked out for that. I'm sorry.
I mean, just talking about and again, talking about material support, talking about First Amendment rights. I mean, there was the case of Tariq Muhammad years and years ago, in which this man who was translating, something way above the pay grade of what we're talking about here, talking about translating Al-Qaeda speeches on his own volition. I mean, they managed to get him on that, but they still it was a very weak charge that they were trying to get him on. So they had to tack on the fact that he was at least attempted at one point to go to a terrorist training camp. That alone was not enough for the government to make its case. And that was someone who absolutely was involved with something that could be considered rhetorical support for a terrorist organization. This alone, going to that height, is beyond anything.
What do you make of the fact that news stories have come out that state that Mahmud Khalil had already received a security clearance from the British government and then presumably the U.S. government as well? I mean,
what I had seen of that is that, this is only going off of what my friend Matthew Petty had told me, is that he was essentially a recipient of the British equivalent of the Fulbright Scholarship, to my understanding. But even then, he got that kind of clearance, not only from Britain, but also from the U.S. clearly, in order to come into this country. If he was a terrorist, there were places that you could have caught it in all of these chains of discussion, for the fact that from his time, this is a guy who was literally born in Syria. He's a Palestinian refugee in Syria. The amount of scrutiny that you are under at all points of this stay, it would have caught something. This is a non-argument, a non-argument that he's a terrorist that just somehow slipped the cracks here.
Yeah, if he was even, I don't know, if he even had a passive interest in terrorism, it would be a failure of the security state beyond anything we have probably ever seen. I did see one of those, one of those base PSYOP guys who also loves Israel say that the British security clearance is proof that, I guess, he was sent here by MI6 to destabilize America.
He is Islamic James Bond.
Yeah, I love a conspiracy theory where Britain is in stark opposition to America and working to undermine us all the time, but Israel isn't. And Israel is in fact that's a new one, I guess.
I saw an interview that a couple Homeland Security officials did with NPR this morning. And the person interviewing them on NPR was just being like, okay, well, what crime? You keep asserting that he is a terrorist or supports terrorism. To what evidence do you have to that effect? And they just kept going around in circles, and they just kept saying, well, look, when you have a student visa, you have to say if you're a terrorist. And if he said he was a terrorist, you never would have let him in the country.
I do remember when you enter the country, they do say, are you a bigamist? Are you a member of the Communist Party? I guess, yeah. Fuck, he lied. Shit.
That reminds me of when we were going to the UK, and I was looking at the British Customs website because I think it was a vape-related thing. I wanted to see if I was allowed to bring jewels or something. And one of the things I saw on the Customs website was do not bring child pornography. it's like one of those things where it's like, well, I thought that was like an unspoken thing generally. Like declaring you're a terrorist.
I mean, I think this gets back to Séamus, like something we said sort of at the beginning of this conversation, where like you can look at him and be like, why didn't they choose someone who was like, loudly on camera saying like, October 7th was good. We love Hamas, like, more terrorism. Yeah. And I think the answer is like precisely because Mahmud Khalil isn't someone like that and is by all accounts like a member in good standing of the Columbia community and is like a thoughtful, intelligent, and someone who was born in a refugee camp and then was able to go to an Ivy League college, which is actually, they just hand those out to people born in refugee camps. It's actually very easy. It's all affirmative action for people who are born in Syrian refugee camps. But the point is, because he is not a violent advocate of terrorism, because he's not anti-Semitic, because he represents like the virtue of someone that would put their own safety on the line to advocate against war and genocide of his own people or for other people. I think that is exactly the reason that he is being made the test case for the power that they're trying to accrue to themselves.
If you make everything associated with the Palestinian cause, and I do mean everything associated with it, completely toxic and radioactive, then you don't have to entertain listening to them. You don't have to entertain responding to their queries or their concerns. You can make it a complete criminal non-entity. And if they can accomplish that, that will be a great boon to the Republicans and also the Democrats, in that they no longer have to think about it, or they at least believe that they no longer have to think about it. Like you said before, these are the actions of a state that knows that it is losing. And it is going to lose the generational battle very, very quickly. I mean, more quickly than I was anticipating, even as this genocide was going on. As it loses that control, I really do fear what the next moves could be. My fear is that they're going to start going after naturalized citizens who have done the same things that Mahmud Khalil has done. And I think they're going to do it maybe within the next month. Like within that sort of time scale. They're moving incredibly quickly with all of these different things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like it seems like they're seeing how much they can get away with just like revoking and invalidating by pure fiat.
And it's as we're seeing right now, it's a completely open question about, I mean, like, I don't want to be doom and gloom here because it is still an open question about what they're going to be able to get away with. But I think we should prepare ourselves for the possibility that they very well might get away with it. And I mean, Séamus, you bring up the word that I think is on everyone's mind, or at least it should be addressed: fear. How frightened are you? And I will state openly, and like I don't like doing this on the show, but like when I think about this shit, it makes me frightened. And like if not for my own personal safety, then like imagining what the country will look like in another 5 or 10 years. And like I'm no like free speech martyr. Like I don't think I'm going to be in prison. I mean, shit. Last time Trump was in office, I did get added to $100 million lawsuit for going at one of his fucking communications guys. But the thing is, here's what I want to say, and like I guess this is like informed by attending that protest yesterday, is like I think everyone who thinks about this or cares about this, whether you are a U.S. born citizen, a naturalized citizen, a legal resident, or someone who's in the country illegally, you're probably already feeling a shitload of fear. The point of this is to make us afraid. And I don't think it's like admitting defeat to say, yeah, this is working, okay? Like I am pretty fucking frightened of like what the implications of this. That being said, I'm admitting that like I'm frightened inside myself in my own thoughts, but in no way, shape, or form is that fear affecting my public stance on this issue, or my going to a protest, or my continuing to talk about this. Because here's the thing, like whether it's Columbia University, the Democratic Party, or just you as an individual, it's very easy to be afraid and just capitulate or pretend they don't notice you, or just like surrender preemptively, or even actively collaborate. But the point is that will only mark you for further persecution and heartache. Like, because all you're proving to them is like whatever they can get away with, they will, and then they'll go do more. So like I think like the only antidote to fear is to continue to show some kind of physical or moral courage on this issue, because like being silent about it will not spare you.
Yeah, being afraid in and of itself does not mean anything. It is, for the most part, you really can't control what you feel in the moment. None of us are Spears from Band of Brothers. We're not absent that reaction. What matters is what you do in the face of it. It is okay to be scared or even be fucking terrified. But as Will pointed out, no matter what you do, whether you try to acquiesce to whatever demand, whether you try to change your speech to adhere to whatever standards you think are being put in front of you, or just stay silent, the bad thing has already happened, and they will do worse. And when you look back on your life, you are going to regret the choices you did not make more than anything. That is all I can tell you.
Pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. That's what Gramsci talks about. That's all I have to say.
And I'll say again, I was very glad to go to that protest the other day. It was something that like made me feel less despondent and depressed. It was cool to see a lot of the people at the protest came up and introduced themselves, and they said they were at the protest because I shared the flyer for it. It's just like you're not alone on this issue, and if anything, you're probably the majority of people in this country. And that right there is the only break that exists on this, because it's not the party you voted for this past election that's going to stand up for you. And I'm going to bring that up in the context of, did you see Trump's remarks about Chuck Schumer in the Oval Office the other day?
Yeah.
Palestinians, something like that? Yeah.
And Schumer is a Palestinian as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian. Okay.
Trump said, Schumer is Palestinian as far as I'm concerned. He's become Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. And I guess my question about this is this a bit of like kayfabe to give people the impression that the Democrats are pro-Palestinian? Or like, do you think about this in the context of another display of power, where that if you are a member in good standing with Israel and you show sufficient fealty to them, then you as a Gentile can demean the religious and ethnic identity of one of the most powerful and prominent Jewish Americans?
I think it's the latter. I mean, what we've seen throughout, and especially intensified after October 7th, is this idea in which left-wing Jews, which Schumer is not a member, he's not a left-wing Jew by any measure, but the idea of the left-wing Jew is contemptible in the same way that a Palestinian or an Arab would be. Zionism as an ideology supersedes the idea of being a Jew, religious or ethnic or otherwise. So at a certain point, if you get to be a important enough Zionist, even if you are a Gentile, you get to be, as you're talking about, you get to be the big dog. You get to talk about how Jews aren't really Jews anymore. I mean, there are other instances in which, I wish I could remember the name of it, but there was a British politician, a Labour friend of Israel, who talked about the dangers of Jews who don't go to synagogue anymore because they're being pro-Palestine. And this man is not a. You're like why? And like, why do you?
We all know the dangers of Jews who only go to synagogue on the high holidays. Okay.
Yeah. Why do you, as a non-Jew, care about who goes to shul or not? And then you have the German anti-Semitism commissioners who go around
who only prosecute Jewish people. Yeah. Like literally, they only prosecute Jewish people for their anti-Semitism laws.
This is so widespread now. I saw one of the guys that the FYM guys watch, this guy Jack Scalafini, who if people don't know.
Sorry, I thought you said Jack Skellington.
Yeah, the FYM guys are just watching A Nightmare Before Christmas over and over again.
Watching Jack Skellington. This guy's an idiot. It's not Christmas, you moron. Jack Scalafini is actually the opposite of Jack Skellington. He's more than skin and bones. Because he's a big fat guy who's his output is he's a sort of like cooking channel, and he's like, I do keto recipes, like tater tots with bacon and cheese on them. I don't know how that's keto. I don't know what keto is. But he's like a 60-something-year-old man who gets catheterized like 30 times a day. And he's like obviously a Trump guy. And today I saw a post from him that was like, those Jews that were supposedly protesting for Palestine didn't even look like Jews. They looked like NASCAR people. And it was like,
what?
Jack, you are statistically one of the least
talking about
Jewish
Nate.
men alive. Jack, you are a presumably indebted, destitute man who only eats like frozen Ore-Ida products, just enveloped in bacon and sour cream. I didn't know you were an expert in like Judaism. Like, it is everyone, all these guys who have never not been in debt and would explode if they got into the driver's seat of a Volvo. Are not even related by marriage to anyone who went to the Seven Sisters schools. They're like, I bet these guys have a girl for a rabbi and she plays guitar. It's like, why do you care about this shit? I don't even care.
No, I mean, this is downwind of like, I mean, I don't think Trump's understanding or love of Judaism or Israel is particularly sophisticated. But it is still downwind of like the larger philo-Semitic way in which pro-Israel foreign policy is governed. Like eventually you become like fascinated with, Israel and Zionism, you become obsessed with it, and then you get into the way that some Germans do, where like you're doing Jewish rituals as like a reconstruction, like you want to get invested in it. You're wearing the Star of David because you want to like see how they
you're
feel.
wearing the dog tags, you're doing all that shit.
Yeah.
Séamus, Felix and I have a friend who lives in Sweden. And she recently told us that it's a growing phenomenon among Scandinavians of converting to Judaism so that they can claim Muslims are oppressing them. People in like Stockholm.
Yeah, like look, people don't want to talk about this. Like being a victim, wanting to like get in on the next victimization thing, it's a thing with some people. And right now, being a Zionist who is under attack, that is like the in vogue thing. So that's why you want to like that's what leads people to get in on these sorts of things. You want to be under attack, and then you want to be able to respond on behalf of those people who are under attack.
Especially if like all your family were Nazis during World War II.
Yeah, that too.
Because if you just kept the name Sven Carlson, something, it'd be a harder hill to climb to be like, these Muslim immigrants are oppressing me. and that's why we should take away their rights.
And I mean, larger discussion that go on for hours, but just like, then you have the phenomenon of people who are literally like the daughters of SS officers who are talking about how everyone in Gaza is involved and is guilty. Like,
yeah,
you are trying to get, like, you're all trying to get away from what your family did.
Yeah, like blood relatives of like the Dirlewanger Brigade being like, they're taught to hate since birth. It's like how the fuck leave it to fucking Germans to find a way to make being a Zionist like more annoying than it already was.
Actually, like speaking of the Trump administration, I think like on our first episode this week, we talked about how there's this weird like a lot of Trump's policies, like his economic policy, his foreign policy, that there is this weird schism in the Trump White House, or at least there appeared to be, on how they were approaching negotiations over the Israel-Gaza ceasefire. And I was going to say, like, there did appear to be this schism, but no more, because like the guy who was the lead negotiator who did direct talks with Hamas and then went on American TV on CNN and said, quote, "America is not an agent of Israel," has been dismissed. And then there was another guy who was up for a position under Tulsi Gabbard, who was he was like certainly a conservative, definitely a right-wing guy, but a critic of Israel and a critic of the idea that the United States needs to go to war with Iran. He's been shit-canned as well. So like, what do we make of what used to be a schism in the Trump White House, at least on this issue, at least a very minor schism, now being what appears to be completely sanded over?
I mean, that minor schism, I think, is something that's created something out of something that is particular to Trump. in that he is obsessed more than anything with that base property of himself, which is getting deals done, right? You'll get the deal done with North Korea. We'll bring Kim Jong-il. I could easily see a future scenario in which he's like, oh, yeah, we brought Hamas to the table. We forced them to get here. We made a brilliant deal with Hamas and Israel, and so on and so forth. But there is only so far in which that can go, and Israel seems to be the threshold in which that cannot go over. So it doesn't matter if it's Kushner's roommate doing the negotiations. If he goes out and he talks to the Hamas guys and he finds out they're human beings, he's got to fucking go. The people inside the administration are going to make that happen. It doesn't matter. And Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not entirely sure that's much of an aberration, at least in her department. She's always been a fucking...
I mean, I don't know what her beliefs are, but any beliefs that she once had, crazy or not, she's abandons and adopts at will.
She is a Hindu nationalist that at one point decided that Bernie was like on the way up. Like that's basically it.
She's gone very far in politics for someone with severe and crippling social anxiety. Like what a weird choice of career for her. What a weird person.
Well, she's got the rogue hair, so she's got that going for her. That can take
anyone she touches, she picks up their opinions. That's what happened to her
life. With Tulsi, and I just want to immortalize one thing here because it's one of the stupidest things I've ever witnessed. Like, she, for politicians, is very attractive, and that leads people to just like insanely follow her and boost her and make her relevant to the people. Like, I had somebody I knew in middle school reach out to me a couple years ago, and he was a total Tulsi freak now, to the point where Tulsi signed his arm at a campaign event, and the next day he got it tattooed on his arm.
Bro,
like,
no,
you are fucking insane. If you have a support base like that, you will go very far, even if otherwise you got nothing going on.
Well, Séamus, to move on from like the domestic area, I mean, like the other like big thing on the foreign policy realm that I think is worth talking about this week is both the expansion of Israel's attacks on Syria and their occupation of Syria, but like some truly horrific revelations over the weekend of like massacres of Alawites in Syria. I mean, like, I think the death toll from the weekend is like well over 1,000. It's probably much higher than that. But like, we've seen videos, if you're unlucky enough to come across it, of just mass executions, just men, women, and children being shot to death. When the Assad government collapsed, and we had Derek on to talk about this, this was the open question about like, is this going to happen? Séamus, is it fair to say now that like this is happening?
Yes. Yeah. And it's worse than I initially anticipated. My original estimation was that this was something that was going to happen in a much more clandestine fashion, something that was going to be a terror to Alawites, but was something that was going to run under the radar. What has instead occurred is just one of the worst massacres of this war, like point blank period. Not only the scale of it, how many civilians were killed in the supposed insurgent crackdown, but the degree to which these atrocities were recorded by the assailants themselves and then published online. I mean, the majority of the videos that you're talking about, these horrible videos, they were recorded by the people who were doing the killing at the time. It's clearly shaken the Syrian government, but it has not shaken it in the way that you would hope or expect. They're mostly looking at it as a nuisance that they have to navigate.
Yeah, I fear their response to this is just going to be, okay, we have to finish the job quicker. I mean, people have pointed out the commonality between Zionists and groups like HTS in that they obsessively document their own crimes, often against the orders of their more pragmatic commanders, like Jelani himself. The thing that fucking shocked and disgusted me was, I think I expected things like this to happen. Unfortunately, it was a thing that people warned about happening if someone like Jelani took over in Syria. But the methods and relish with which the HTS forces annihilated entire families, dragging people behind cars, is just kind of like a level of hatred and like pure titillation with torture that is just, I mean, only really rivaled by the IDF or the Third Reich. Yeah, after seeing also the EU put out that statement condemning the Alawites.
The EU condemned the Alawite community in Syria?
Yeah.
For what?
They did, what they essentially said was that they condemned the pro-Assad attacks that the Syrian government is dealing with, and then did not acknowledge in any real shape or form the massacres that followed it.
Yeah, and that was just, I mean, I got a really sinking feeling when I saw that, because it's like they really have like no one in their corner. Like, who is going to fucking lift a finger for them in any way?
No, I mean, I just like, I think about this in the context of the conversation we just had about what constitutes material or rhetorical support for groups that are designated terrorist organizations by the U.S. government. Well, the guy currently in charge of Syria is like the definition of someone who was, up until a week ago, practically, was a member of a terrorist group that was deemed as such by the, British and American governments. And now, if you support him or say, I support the current Syrian government, are you supporting terrorism? Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess they've got off that list or something as they do these massacres.
They took the bounty off his fucking head. Like, they just met with him once and they decided, hey, it's not worth it anymore. All this stuff is spurious, yeah.
This is another weird parallel between Israel and the current Syrian government. The Europeans that are not currently converting to Judaism so they can claim minority status, the remainder are, you've probably seen this, a very weird type of European that I've noticed since like 2014. People who have like never left the Schengen zone, like white Belgians who call people like Rafida. Like,
Jesus.
Like there is this, it's not as widespread, I think, as like the Swedes who are converting to Judaism, but there is like a trend in the EU of like, people who live in like Belgium or someplace like that, or have no intention of leaving it, aren't even really Muslim, but have this insane sectarian hatred towards Shia, which is one of the most like, I mean, I know that like imperial life causes these incredibly weird types of things, but it is one of the most perverse things I've ever seen.
They're putting like black suns behind Jolani. I think I've seen it. There was one image I saw where there was a black sun behind both Zelensky and Jolani. And I thought that was...
God.
No,
I mean, Zelensky is one thing, but like Jolani is... They're occupying his country and he's like, thank you. Like, how can you be a fan of like him? He sucks.
I think I'll speak about this in two sort of calibers here. One, my shock that Jolani was able to survive all of this and become president. The fact that he managed to navigate all of this so perfectly that he's now the president of Syria, the official president, and nobody objects to it, really. And also that we have to pretend this is like a new guy, Ahmed al-Shara'a, that is just a suit-wearing moderate Islamist that nobody's ever had any objection to. But two, I mean, what you're talking about, this kind of crude sectarianism that isn't really governed by anything, it's what's been pushing Syrian government policy throughout the fall of Assad, where they're not really concerned by Russia's influence anymore, even though they were the ones who saved Assad and committed scores of massacres during the civil war from bombs. They're not concerned by Israel anymore, despite the fact that there are groups in the country dedicated to Al-Aqsa Mosque. I cannot mention, who knows how many people talked about one day taking Jerusalem, and now they don't care about Israel. The one thing they do care about, though, is Iran and Shias, and just having no sympathy towards them whatsoever. So you have Jolani talking about Israel, the country that's literally invading it right now, talking about it, well, they have no reason to. We don't really know why they're doing it. We'll respond to them at some point.
We're not going to stoop to their level.
Yeah, like what the fuck are you
When
talking
they go
about?
low, we go high.
What the fuck are you talking about? But when it comes to the issue of Shias, that's when Jolani suddenly he starts talking about how we're not a nation that cries and beats their chests when he's talking about the rituals they do.
Yeah.
He talks about why are the Iranians they want to respond to 1,400-year-old conflicts. We don't understand them. When the issue of the massacres of Alawites comes up, it takes him 3 to 4 speeches to actually talk about the substance of the issue. And instead he talks about, oh yeah, there are violations. These are problems that this country is going to have to deal with. He speaks about it as if it's just like a single murder or a robbery that happened. Something like a municipal issue. It is something that he is totally unconcerned with. It's a maddening situation. Maddening.
Yeah, it is one of the most discouraging things. I mean, obviously the situation in and of itself, but like really that EU thing really like that was incredibly grim. I don't want to just offer like purely awful prognostications, but it is a very grim indicator.
I think what like in regards to the EU specifically, I mean, they were so gung-ho for Assad to be gone that there were countries like Austria, the day after Assad fell, there was no other government in place. They started deporting Syrians immediately. They didn't care what government was going to go in. They didn't care what was going to happen afterward. Just the fact that Assad was gone meant that the pretext needed to be destroyed. It couldn't exist any longer. So they have to pretend that this country is totally safe to go back to no matter what. And if they interrupt that equation, if they interrupt that pretext, if they interrupt that plan, that fucks everything up. Then the Syrian refugees have to keep staying around indefinitely. Who knows for how long? So they're going to keep sending foreign ministers to Syria. They're going to keep sending whoever they want as long as those Syrians are still there. They're being treated like insects under their shoes that they're desperately trying to get off, and they can feel that they're about to. No, it's very discouraging.
Yeah, really in the last like 3 or 4 years, European liberals have talked about Syrian migrants as like this problem that needs to be solved more than anything. Like just this shitty inconvenience that if not for them, we would be winning these elections and everything would be fine. That is really the most European thing I can think of, is denying a horrific ongoing massacre so you can feel better about deporting people. Because like even if they did acknowledge it, they would still fucking deport all these people. But it just has to maintain the appearance of propriety.
I mean, I think about this in terms of I know we have been accused of being like Assad supporters on this show, and like, look, his government carried out all kinds of horrific, kidnappings, tortures, executions, mass murders as well, and like it's no support for Assad to just simply say, I've seen this movie before, whether it's Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi, these people that like are supported by U.S. policy because they're dictators. And then they become targeted by that same imperial apparatus, removed, and the countries they preside over turn into even greater nightmares than they were before. And it's like, coincidentally, there's no shortage of people on the like left liberal side of things who will never be out of work finding a way of, convincing you that actually U.S. foreign policy is right in this regard. And like, it's no credit to Assad or support for his government to have seen this coming and seen this movie before.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perpetual intervention machine. One like shitty government that like not that long ago the U.S. would employ as like a black site contractor. You are a monster. You hate whatever ethnic group or religion or whatever if you don't support intervention expressly led by the people who were employing this guy as a black site contractor. If you do not trust those people, you are racist. You love every horrible thing that happens. You are driven to glee by sights of bloodshed. They are gone. The next thing that grows and festers in the even worse environment put forth by people that used to contract the former guys of black site that will be the next place where you have to support intervention, or you like every bad thing that happens. It just keeps going on and on and on like that forever. And you can either be an asshole who loves it when all these people die and you're heartless, or you can be wrong about fucking everything and cause this endless cycle of shit.
You can see that cycle, I think, most particularly obviously with what Israel is doing in Syria right now, the justifications that they're putting forth. Because right now, obviously, following the Alawite massacres, are talking about how evil Jolani is. But before that, they were trying to propagate this idea that Jolani was about to massacre the Druze, and he was about to genocide the Druze out of existence. These groups like the Suwaida Military Council suddenly popped up, and then immediately the day after they popped up, Israel was saying, if HTS attacks the Suwaida Military Council, then we will intervene militarily. They're talking about demilitarizing the country so that the Druze can be protected. They're sending in aid trucks to aid.
Oh, so they are sending it. They're sending aid trucks somewhere.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
Yeah, no. They're trying. They even though these are people who have spent the last 2 years destroying an entire civilization, they still know that on certain people in the West, these narratives will work. So the Druze within Israel, they're sort of perceived as loyal Israeli citizens. Therefore, getting more into the country, unifying that territory, maybe potentially in the future, that's a great idea. And then they'll be protecting ethnic minorities which are under threat. It's a well-laid track here. The Syrian government is trying to head off that. They're trying to do agreements with Druze leaders. They're integrating the SDF, they're doing all these different things. But as long as they are unwilling to oppose Israel in any meaningful way, they're going to continue to get railroaded here. There's no way out of the equation that Israel has formed for them. It's bad. It's bad for the Jolani government on basically every front at the moment.
Okay, Felix, I don't think we have time to talk about UAE. Do you mind if I just bring it back to just two quick hits from back here in America? Just a little palate cleanser, because this episode was extremely grim.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I always like to talk about two things that happened domestically in this country this week that I would like to address on the show. The first is everything's computer.
This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer.
It's all computer. Everything's computer. The Tesla auto sales room on the White House lawn, I got to say, was, again, unfortunately, you do have to hand it to him. Over and over again, Trump just keeps creating these singular images and moments and turns of phrase that so perfectly capture what modern America actually is that it's like a perfect diamond bullet fired into my head. It's like Apocalypse Now. But Tesla's stock price dropped 40% over the weekend, and then they had this auto showroom where it's they're fantastic cars, and then he gets in one and he goes, "Oh wow, it's all computer."
He hated it.
Yeah, no,
it is really not up his alley. That was incredible. I mean, have you seen that video of the first person I saw post it was Michael Hudson, where it's he's driving with Melania she's recording it. She's in the back seat and Barron is in the front seat with him. This is 2013. And he's listening to the song Blank Space by Taylor Swift.
Yep.
One of the most surreal, dreamlike videos I've ever seen. I love watching
I couldn't even believe he was behind the wheel of a car.
That is the most dreamlike aspect of it.
Yeah.
But it's it's like a Rolls Royce, and you could tell he just hates all the touch screens, the way that everything's a little higher, a little lower, the hardness of the seats. He hated the shit out of it, but this was obviously one of those things where, mathematically about a third or a fourth of people who love Trump hate Elon. If you just look at their respective approval numbers. And I guess this was this was them trying to cut the Gordian knot here. A third of people that love me think you are the most annoying piece of shit ever. Why don't I say your car is great? Well, it turns out your car sucks, but it's computer.
It's computer. And I bring this up because, look, I'm guilty of this. Like, my initial instinct on this is that Trump is going to get sick of Elon in about a week's time. I mean, like, I got to say, I have to eat a little crow on that one, because if he's willing to put up with this shit and, like, and just let another rich guy big dick him like that and, like, turn him into, like, a crazy Eddie.
Crazy Eddie. His prices are insane.
You know, what can I do to put you in this Tesla today? I don't know. Well, I gotta talk to my boss, but you know, he never done this before. But he's willing to knock 10% off that True coat. I mean, there's something else going on here, and I don't expect the Trump-Musk relationship to sour anytime soon, despite my initial erroneous assessment of how that might play out. I mean, how do you feel about that?
My assessment of it, like, initially was that Trump likes the fact that Elon is like a lightning rod for all the criticisms that are happening. I mean, all of it seems to, like, squarely be focusing on, like, Doge, the brunt of it. But I mean, to, like, dive head first into it like this, to make yourself joined at the hip. I mean, what was he talking about? Like, the Chinese think in centuries, we think in quarters. And he was positioning that as a positive thing. Like, maybe,
you know, some people when they play chess, they're thinking 5 moves ahead, but not me. I'm thinking on the next move. That's the most important one.
Yeah. Some people play chess. I play checkers.
like I know he's dumb, and then we say that, but then he actually, but no, like, some things he might just be like, I don't think he's thinking ahead. I think he's just like, oh, fuck. Oh, Elon, yeah, your stock's tumbling, buddy. I'll help you out. And then not thinking about what comes, like, oh, God. This is,
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, the prediction that they would have a grand falling out very early on, I really don't think that was the worst prediction in the world, people who made it, because it does follow a pattern, certainly. Of course, like, Musk is an aberration to that pattern because he just, you know, it's the same reason why Trump has not had, like, a big public episode with Miriam Adelson, in part because he thinks that she's Warren Zevon, but also, you know, she's giving him, like, you know, $40 million a month to his PAC or to fucking whatever, right? Like, they are necessary to maybe not his political project, but his project of getting $40 million. I think, though, if there is, like, a fracture, the thing I said a little while ago was that if there is a fracture, it won't be on Trump's end, him initiating it. It will be because Elon is so... I mean, you saw that thing where he got booed at the Dave Chappelle show and he was, like, cutting himself. He's really good. Some people are able to, like, withstand 100 million, 200 million, however many people hating the shit out of them. Trump is one of those people. Elon is, like, really not.
I mean, it goes back to his dad abusing him and, like, telling him that he's a worthless piece of shit for getting beat up at school every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think he eventually, like, the realization that he is the lightning rod and he's getting the shit end of the stick publicity-wise, because he used to have, like, Obama-type favorability, much to my chagrin, and now it's, like, Bush in 07, it's like 30 fucking 65. It's really shitty. And I think that will, I could see him doing something rash or stupid. I could see him in, like, 2028 being like, I've just realized how stupid racism is. Like, some bullshit profound thing. We're all made from the same corners of the universe. We're all made of stars. What difference does it matter if one star is a different color than the other? You know, something repellent like that. Yeah, we're all from Africa. We're all from Africa by way of the universe.
They call him Brother Elon.
Something like truly gross like that, where it's like, I condemn Trump. Because he's done it before. He was on Trump's business council, and then he was like, after getting yelled at, I've realized that he's bad. Back when he was woke, like, not that long ago. So I think look forward to that when he does that. And one of the only J6 pardon people who is not returned to prison for killing a cop or abducting a child will blow him up. And that is my prediction.
All right, and the final thing I want to talk about, like, I mean, like, this pairs so nicely with it, because it's like, I'm thinking about like in a bad like comic book about like a dystopian future that was written in the 90s that was like really heavy-handed, really leaden, where it's just like America's a dystopian nightmare. Like, like a cyberpunk hacker, Ajax Milktop, is, bringing it down from the inside. So it's like in that version, like the White House is just a car dealership. Like, what is America? Giant car dealership. What's the other really like ham-fisted like dystopian satire that you could like paint about the world 2025 in the year 1992? What is America as well? Burger. What is our health? What is the Secretary of Health and Human Services? What's his job? Promoting burger, or rather, promoting beef tallow. The shit with RFK Jr. just essentially doing ads for Steak and Shake because they've now claimed that they're frying their fries in tallow.
Yeah, I love the American health movement because it's like, oh, are you going to take on like agribusiness or like the horrible way that we process meat or like the quality of the food? No, we're going to make fries yummier. That's all beef tallow is just how yummy the fries are. It's the same thing with fucking Mexican Coke. How much better for you is cane sugar than fucking corn syrup slop? It's probably like
tastes better.
It tastes better, and it's on a long enough timeline, it's probably better to have the real thing. But you're still not supposed to like drink it every fucking day.
I've been drinking 5 Mexican Cokes a day, and I'm doing fine.
Wait. Hold on. So the fast food companies were making fries less yummy for no reason?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be supporting that?
Well, I mean, the reason is because it's cheaper to use seed oils.
Of course. I'm sorry, I don't know how the Steak and Shake business runs.
I'm pretty sure Steak and Shake gets the fries delivered frozen, pre-fried in seed oil, and then they just reheat them in the fryers with tallow in it.
Yeah, that is more than likely what's happening. But it is like, I remember seeing people who were like, I think some of our stuff is stupid, but it's good that someone's talking about health. And it's like,
that's telling people to eat burger and fries.
Yeah, he's literally.
He said it was good if everyone got measles.
He's like in his capacity as a cabinet secretary for Health and Human Services. His announcement is, guess what, everyone? Fries taste better now. Like, fucking crap. You're right, Will. This is so much like a seat, like a not an A-tier anus like Preacher, but like one that no one remembers, where it has my favorite convention of 90s graphic novels. A fat guy sarcastically reciting the Pledge of Allegiance while smoking a cigar that he lit with money.
Except instead of George Washington on the dollar bill, it's Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the Pledge of Allegiance is like, I pledge allegiance to the United Shareholders of Corporations.
I'm right. I feel like we should write this comic.
This is such a good idea. Yeah. Oh, I love stuff like that. That's like my favorite genre of stuff. Is things from 1993 like that, where it's like I
love that we can hear the ice cream man in the background of this.
There is this fucking ice cream truck that goes by my street 5 times a day. It's 45 degrees outside.
Yeah, but it was 60 degrees yesterday. So.
No, I don't know. Whatever.
Get your beef tallow, frozen beef tallow.
That type of like Gen X stuff where it's like the protagonist sees like a Nike billboard and then he just writes like "fuck you" on it. Like that's I don't even know what you call that genre because it's so specific to like a 3-year period of the 90s. But it's my favorite thing.
Well, we're living it.
Enos core.
Enos core. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is a politically confusing day for me as a long-term enjoyer and defender of Steak and Shake. That was my go-to late-night burger place in Cincinnati. So this is my own personal, I'll still keep eating that garbage.
I've never had it. Is it any good?
I thought it was pretty good. Good shakes.
Steak and Shake is good.
Yeah.
It is good. And the one bad experience I ever had there, it wasn't really it was their fault because they didn't hire enough servers, but like it was just packed. I was with my family in Ohio for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe we were banished there or something.
Maybe you and I were at the same Steak and Shake for some reason years ago.
it took like 120 minutes for them to like get to our table, and it really upset me as like an 8-year-old. But they did, as like a consolation, because our server felt bad about it. She left the syrup dispenser at our table. Yeah.
There, in my hometown in Illinois, I remember outside of the Steak and Shake, there was for some reason a bronze statue of Roger Ebert. I don't remember what it was for, but it was directly related to the fact that it was a Steak and Shake.
All right, let's end it there today, boys. That was a good one, Séamus. Thank you so much for hanging out. Always a joy to talk to you.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Do you have anything to plug or share at the end of today's episode? Nope.
Keep going to see EFIS as it comes to you.
See EFIS. See EFIS. Citizen, report for EFIS.
Can we donate to a Trump PAC and get him to like plug EFIS?
Probably a little too rich for our blood, but you know.
Okay. Let's do we'll kill two birds at once. We'll do that thing where we say we're a minority-owned business because I'm Jewish, because that's a new rule with the Commerce Department. Remember?
Yeah.
We'll get a loan for like, I don't know. We have to like get his attention. Let's get a loan for $40 million from the government.
And then donate it to the government?
We'll donate it to like, the Saving America, whatever fucking PAC. And then he'll like do a video where he's like, it's a classic movie that everyone loves. Reminds you of indie comedies from the 90s. Like Dirty Work, but not as mean.
The 2-disc special edition.
I don't even really try to do an impression of him. I'm not good. All my impressions are like the same 3 voices, but I like his random pitch shifting. It's always really funny to me.
Great movies like Sunset Boulevard and EFIS.
I think he would compare it to like an unexpected. He'd be like, everyone remembers Bowfinger, mid-budget comedies of the 90s that were big on laughs. And some say ahead of their time.
Some say it's as funny as Robin Hood, Men in Tights.
I watched that movie like 800 times as a kid. Starring the great Dave Chappelle. Gary Elwin.
And the guy from The Princess Bride. Oh, he's very funny. Does accents. We didn't even know he was British.
I didn't even know Richard Lewis used to be Jewish, but he's not. He's Palestinian now. All right. I said I would move swiftly, but here I am.